So Promethean playing on their home system. Do you reckon they'll be in better shape rather than when they played on Voices of Wars?
It's Promethean just played against this one. I just played against Realm on this one, right? I think they'll do better on this one than they did last time, but I'm not so sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have said that they'll do it.
I think Promethean's going to win the orbital race because we've seen Voices of War consistently slower in the orbital race.
So I think we'll jump in. So I'm not sure about Promethean. They don't seem to have had a good showing out today. So I think Voices of War might be able to clinch it, even on Promethean's home system here.
Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm actually going to switch out with Quitch casting, like we had mentioned earlier. He's going to come in, take over as co-caster, and I'm going to go take a break.
See you later.
See ya.
Don't worry about me. I don't need a break. I'll just cast for 4 hours straight. Can I have a whip? You know. Oh, hey there, Quitch.
What ho?
Yes, wonderful.
Yes, what ho, old boy? Ready for casting?
Wicked.
Let's do this. What?
Yes.
Yes,
Splendid.
I am ready. Hello, everybody.
Who are you?
I am some guy. Some guy who's normally sitting behind the scenes, but today will be joining us for casting this exciting 4v4 in Clan Wars.
Wow!
It's gonna be amazing.
Get hype!
Well, unfortunately, I have doomed Voices of War in this one. As part of my tradition of guessing who's going to win and getting it horribly wrong, I have voted for them.
Well, I also voted for Voices of War, and I usually get it wrong as well, so I think Promethean have got it in the bag.
High five, baby. High five. Good game, everyone. I think we can just call it there, really.
Yeah, I think we'll call it there. Good game, guys. There was hype for about 5 seconds until we realised Promethean have won.
We spoiled it. We're so sorry.
Yeah, spoilers. Sorry.
Exactly. If you're watching the video of this, you should probably have skipped that bit.
Yeah, we'll just skip this. We'll edit it out.
Yeah, good. Good work.
So, ping's coming out. Promethean's home system, so they should have a good idea where the spawns are.
I think we're definitely going to see a bit of a north versus south go. Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to see some close-on action then. We've already seen a couple of pings go there. I think they're just pinging everywhere at this point.
I think they're just pinging for the sake of it.
Yeah, no, they're screwing with us, I think. But I expect to see a start similar to the last game on this system. A lot of close-up action, a couple of early kills. I've been interested to see that so much grenadier use as well. I think with this patch and people still sort of discovering the meta at this point, there's going to be people are trying out those grenadiers, you know, advance with combat fabbers, build walls, fire your grenadiers over their walls. I don't know if that's going to stay around though, especially on a system like this. It's still relatively open, it's quite easy to get around the walls. But in areas like that, I think, it can work out quite well.
I think it's nice though, particularly that the combat fabbers now can build walls. But we're going to jump straight into the game here. Hello and welcome everybody, I'm ZaphodX, and we are here with Clan Wars Season 1 as we see Voices of War face off against Promethean on their home system. And I'm joined by my co-caster Quitch today.
Hello there!
And here we go. As you predicted, we kind of got a north versus south going on, as we see a lot of the Voices of War players spawning north of the Promethean players, and then one of these Promethean players out here on his own in the little island here. A little bit more isolated. He kind of has more room to spread out, grab some more eco, and then send in some attacks a little bit later into the game.
Well, I think this initial spawning really does favour Promethean. So long as they don't let this guy here get overwhelmed early on, that spawning at the back island is going to give them a big economic advantage. This area should be quite easy to lock down with that choke.
Yeah, they should easily be able to defend in that area and not be in too bad shape. And as long as they do give that support to that player that's kind of in a 2v1 situation, I think they'll be in okay. And he just needs to hold off for long enough until he gets some support coming in from the right-hand side, as that player will be able to help him. But he's not really going to be able to get in there early game, but mid-game, as long as he holds out, he should be okay. There are some obstructions here. It's kind of a little bit choke pointy, so maybe he'll be alright defending.
And indeed, he's going for a rather more defensive approach, I think, with going for the tanks versus the realm players near him, who are going for a much more heavy bot approach. And I think we will see them switch over to boom bots to try and make a rush on him once they discover that it's all by himself.
Yeah, they will. And teleporter going up very early, as we see in minute 3 here already, that teleporter going up. So he's put the radar up, he knows he's in trouble, and he's going to do something about that. We do see that Voice of War do have their radar up as well, and they can see that player's down. They're probably going to go all out and concentrate on him. They're not super close, so it's going to be quite a walk for that second commander to get down there and put the pressure on. So he might be okay.
Well, we see, in fact, Promethean going for a very early orbital back there. They know that guy's by himself. They're going to try and get off planet, take the moon, not lose it on their own system this time. And indeed, I even see Voice of War taking advantage of the Tier 1 Pelicans, start doing some little Faber drops.
Ah, nice, yeah. So saving a whole load of time there. The Pelicans are very fast. You can move your engineers very nice and quickly. And already walling off as well for this Promethean player that spawned on his own, so going quite early and getting up into the orbital layer. Perhaps he's going to be really concentrating on just keeping his base safe, and then doing all of the micro and buns and building up on the moon.
Well, I think so. I think with an extra 26 mechs out there, that could give them quite the economic edge if they can get themselves up there, and of course if they can hold on. So a lot of ifs, and Voices of War are going to be putting quite the pressure on the front lines here, but it could really pay off for them.
So both teams at 270 metal, very even right now. Teleporter is up, however, so the Promethean player can now get reinforcements, and I think the window of rushing is well and truly gone as we hit 5 minutes in here. I mean, the commanders move forwards, but there's walls up. They destroyed a couple of mechs. There's turrets, there's tanks here, there's the teleporter up, and I think their window for rushing is closed now. They don't really have a 2v1 situation either. They've just got a 1v1 going on.
Well, a slight boo-boo by Promethean in placing the teleporter the wrong way round, unfortunately, which means if it comes under attack, their troops are coming out on the wrong side to fire back, so a slight mistake, but you're right, they're starting to lock this area down. I think Voices of War missing their window there, really, and they're going to regret that as the game goes on. Promethean very much locking this whole area down with walls. Some very defensive play. I think they're going to go for the long game here.
Interestingly, we see some more moves coming in here as Promethean are actually trying to break through, doing some raiding. Being shut down now, but right now they're controlling the area right now. They've got the walls down over here as well with a turret behind them, so relatively easy to defend. And they're kind of just controlling this area, this choke point, for now.
Taking a very static approach as well, not making too many pushes, just sort of dropping the walls, moving the tank groups up to hold the chokes, but not venturing too far. And Voices of War we see very much taking the air game at the moment, so I don't think we're going to see Promethean make too many aggressive moves. It's just going to be up to Voices of War really to try and take the initiative here.
And we do see a commander's now come out into the orbital layer, and he's going to move over to the moon for Promethean, so he's going to get off. Now, really beginning to lose a bit of map control for Promethean. They haven't spread out much. They haven't captured like these huge areas of mechs. They just haven't even moved out to them yet. And at the moment, a lot of the northern hemisphere and all the metal enclosed in it is under Voices of War's control.
Well, I think unfortunately we're going to see here that because they have let Voices of War take the air game, the entire air sphere from them, that they're really going to struggle to take those mechs now, because anything that expands out there is just going to get bombed by Voices of War, and they're really just going to have to rely on buns. But with 26 mechs, I don't think it's going to be enough to really allow them to just ignore metal that's in their territory.
Third F actually going up for Promethean though, so getting a little bit more production up. Definitely need to play catch up right now.
And indeed, Promethean starting to come under quite a bit of pressure there. They've got quite a large force of tanks though, and they are effectively throwing their sizable portion of their army into what is just a defensive position, not taking any new territory for themselves, not really putting any pressure on Voices of War.
Pelter fire coming in. They've actually built 3 pelters and a 4th one's on the way. So they're really going for the slow siege rather than the rush. And it's actually beginning to pay off for them as they begin to creep their walls in and getting a little bit more damage. And the pelter fire eventually is going to start breaking through for them. And it looks like the player has begun to lose some ground there.
Well, on Buns, Promethean really starting to move for rapid expansion and then lockdown, going for a first air factory so they can quickly take all the metal before pumping out the bombers and then moving to vehicles. Although oddly no teleporters, so no plans to send troops back from here at the moment.
So it's a race against time at the moment. They really need to get those air fabbers out there and build all those mechs. They've even got out another Astraeus. No, that's the Astraeus they initially had. So they're trailing 300 metal to 500 now. So they're behind, and they really do need to get that metal up on the moon and get that advantage back.
Yeah, I have to say, I already... Not quite as far behind in units though as the production might suggest, and indeed only 4 factories behind. So they're holding their ground, but this is a case of they're going to be slowly worn down if it continues to play out like this. But they have started to make a move into the airspace now, so it's not quite so easy for Voice of War. But again, they still haven't taken this large collection of mechs sitting just behind their bases.
Yeah, it's so unusual that there's map control here they haven't even been taking. And this player has spawned on his own. Oh wow, another teleporter coming down the back of his base. Only 2 fabbers, so it'll get built relatively quickly. Not super fast, but relatively quickly. And they can start doing some attacks in there. And that could be 1 base down for Promethean. And they've already just lost one actually. The gates have just been broken down. And the units have come straight through and they're going to take care of that base. 2 bases lost is a big loss. And they really need to make this moon pay off for them right now. Or that gamble won't have been worth it.
Yeah, I think... well, actually, Voice of War making some mistakes, though, in this patch by going for so many air fabbers. I think what we're seeing here is that they really should have had someone, operating fabbers through Pelicans, expand out that way with the more efficient, faster fabbers. They've still got very heavy air fabbers in the patch that just isn't going to favour that. In actual fact, I think there are a lot of changes that have come in through the PTE in the latest balances are very much going to favour some of the higher APM players with the combat fabber walls going down in front of your forces, moving troops through, you doing drops with tier 1 Pelicans. A lot of things are going to favour people who can be in a lot of places at once, carrying out a lot of actions at once.
Promethean beginning to lose ground here. Try and do some counter-attacking after they lost their base.
Yeah, unfortunately, they've set themselves up with a very static approach. They've walled off the back, but they didn't really, and that was a big mistake, really. I think because that they were 2 against 1 at the north. They weren't going to make any ground there. So really, the rear, where they've walled themselves off, is really where they should have been making their pushes and perhaps raiding into Voices of War's territory. It actually, in fact, looks very vulnerable back there. Some docks back there, a bit of air support. They could really do some damage, but they haven't, and that's what's giving Voices of War this massive economy advantage.
Yeah, some raiding around the side could be pretty powerful and pay off for them, and likewise a teleport around the back of Voices of War's base would be nice as well.
Well, they have all these. They have a bunch of docks queued up by a teleporter in the secure southern base, but really, those docks have no business being there. That they'd be much better off attacking Voices of War's resources, really getting them to pay attention to somewhere other than the front lines.
Because although their bases are quite strong, there's a lot of unprotected mechs.
Yes, absolutely. I think the walls are very focused on some rather small battle areas, and perhaps just having a player who's doing nothing but handling the raiding on a couple of different fronts could really have thrown Voices of War off their game. I think there's absolutely nothing defending this. It would be totally reliant on bombers, and with enough micro, those docks could dodge those bombers and really do some damage out there.
Excuse me. So it looks like they're actually beginning to catch up in terms of metal, just like a little bit. Not a huge amount, but they are beginning to build those mechs on the moon. It's beginning to pay off for them a little bit.
Yeah, they're locking that down. In actual fact, if they can find the resources, or they're given the pressure they're under, I don't think it's likely. But having said that, they've just started going tier 2, which I was going to suggest might give them an advantage if they can afford to get it up. But with seeing the pressure they're under at the north, I'm not entirely sure that's advisable. Because by the time they get that tier 2 factory out and they start working that economy, they may have already lost the war anyway.
So we're getting a couple of freezes here. Hopefully we'll be okay. Lots of wall usage, haven't we? We've seen a lot of wall usage in a lot of these games. just seems to be so powerful, and I think there was talk of fixing it so your units can't fire from behind walls.
No, it's when you're firing at a unit behind a wall, if you target the unit rather than allowing your units to choose their target, for taller things like the commander, the dual laser turrets, they will actually shoot that unit even if it's behind walls.
Right.
And they've been talking about fixing that, but I don't believe that this patch has fixed it. So when you're building walls in front of your commander, he's actually in fact not protected if the other player just...
T1 bombers coming in against commander here. Oh, I think there's enough. It's not a one pass. In fact, it's not enough to actually take him out. It takes him all the way down to 18% here. They did have enough anti-air there to take out all the bombers before they even got a second go.
Shame really they didn't move in with the grenadiers at the same time, because they could have hit that commander, perhaps given enough fire to really just finish him off.
On the moon, finally beginning to pay off. Last amount of the mechs are being built. And if we look at the eco now, they've caught up. They're 430 to 600, so they are actually closing the gap a little bit.
They have done a very good job in keeping their army at a relatively similar size, only behind by about 40 units.
Teleporter come in at the back of Voice of War base. This is exactly what we want to see here. And they have a couple of anti-air in the mix as well, so they're not super vulnerable to these bombers that are right next to them. This is great for them. Already taken down 2 mechs, going to chase down more, splitting up their groups as well. Bombers come in, bombers get shot down. Wow, nice job. And this is some really important raiding for them.
Yeah, some nice moves by Promethean, and really the kind of thing I think I'd have liked to see them doing earlier, to keep Voices of War distracted from those front lines, but they're not. The Voice of War looking really vulnerable back there, and indeed getting their own teleporter up to bring their troops over to counter this push. But they're having to stream troops in that direction now, and that's going to give Promethean an opening, or at least a breather.
Yeah, this is working really great. We're going to see the medal go down finally a little bit for Voices of War. Boombot's been sent against them. They're not going to do too much. And units now scrambled all the way up to the north. So Promethean kind of dictating the battles here. Nice little teleporter coming up from Voices of War, trying to get their reinforcements through the teleporter over to the back lines nice and quick. If that can work out for them logistically, that'd be a good move.
Well, if they can get troops there fast enough, I think they're going to shut down this raid. One of the Promethean groups already running into a much larger Voices of War group, and that's not going to go anywhere. Yeah. I think, to be honest, that they've chosen the wrong troops for this. So they've got a very slow-moving tank force, when I think a faster Docks raiding group would have been better. Perhaps some anti-air around the teleporter to safeguard it, but Docks up there to hassle.
Yeah, just almost hit and run. You just get in there, get them raid quickly before they can even do anything about it, and then you're successful even when you die anyway. But this is the problem. Voices of War now really going ahead. They have their T2 out and they're working on it really hard. They put a lot of build power on it, and that's why their eco is increasing so quickly now. Currently leading 750 to 550. Now we did see T2 started. T2's out, and first T2 power gen's going up, and T2 mechs hasn't been started. So Promethean is still on their way, and they're still in the game, and they're still catching up. And as soon as they get access to T2 eco, there'll be much more in.
Yeah, as long as Promethean can keep doing attacks along the back of Voices of War, then really Promethean have a much larger safe area for their tier 2 resources. It's really just coming down to whether or not they can hold on long enough, and indeed we see the army count really the difference is really starting to grow now, with about 200 unit difference, where before there was only about 40.
Yeah, it was quite close before, but now trailing behind 400 units to 600. In favour of Voices of War. And now coming in for an attack as well. Coming in here, Inferno's leading the way, tanking a lot of the damage, helping get rid of the walls nice and quick as well. Good work. Bit of a counter-attack coming in from Promethean, but if they lose their main base, it won't really be worth it. They do have T2 engineers trying to get up advanced laser defences. That'll help against the Infernos. They might be able to hold on here because they do have those turrets.
Well, there's an attack from the other side as well, coming in from Voice of War. They're really just attacking everywhere now, but indeed Promethean have managed to sneak in amongst the T2 resources of Voices of War. Could really do a nice bit of damage there.
Wow, that's amazing. There's so many T2 mechs there that are going down. A lot of turrets being really rapidly built by these engineers. There's so much build power there. They're going to be able to help defend. How much have they taken care of here? Just 2 T2 mechs, 3 T2 mechs. Fourth one's going to go down. They're probably going to lose their units here against the sheer amount of turrets, but I still think that's a great win. Slowing them down. It's now only 600 to 750 again, so they've actually closed the gap a little bit in terms of eco and managed to defend at their other base.
But again, we see that they're now about 300 units behind in terms of army. It's slowly losing their grip on that planet, it seems like. Voice of War just can't quite find the opening to finish this.
And this is the problem. As soon as you start falling behind in units, you're going to be in trouble. Luckily, all the units for Voice of War at the moment are just way out of position over here. Probably going to get through that teleport or go back to the front lines. And, yeah, there they are.
Well, I think we're seeing the problem with Voices of War that they had previously, which is they just don't seem to know how to close out the game. They've got a huge advantage, but they just can't finish it. And indeed, it's Promethean who are dictating the play here. Again, raiding around the back of Voices of War, and Voices of War just chasing them.
Now, it's great to see all of this raiding from Promethean, getting up these sneaky teleporters, doing raiding. We see air raiding going on here. But unfortunately, it's a bit too late. If they'd have done this earlier, before T2 came out, then getting rid of these T1 mechs would be a massive impact on the eco. But with the T2 eco out, it's slowing them down a bit, but it's not stopping them whatsoever, because you just keep building more T2 mechs.
Well, Voices of War just tried to get up some teleporters there on Bonds. Had I think about 3 Fabbers building teleporters, but the bombers are too much, took out the teleporters, Avengers came over, took out the Fabbers. So one invasion shut down already.
Good work. So they haven't invested too many resources, but they managed to defend against that pretty effectively, it looks like. The one thing they have to be careful of now, of course, is the T2 fighters can come in here and completely nullify your bombers that are trying to defend.
Well, Voices of War now making a big push from the north, but Promethean seem to have their forces over them. I think they'll be able to hold this. So it's looking like another, what I think will potentially be another ineffectual attack, although that wall's rather out of position. Indeed, I think Promethean are getting in their own way with their own wall.
Yeah, it's a pity here. It looks like Promethean are actually moving in here, trying to get into the direct confrontation. I don't think this is something they want to do. They have loads of sniper bots, so surely they want to stay out of range, use their sniper bots, and just thin out the forces rather than go straight in for confrontation.
Yeah, I think they'd have been better just pulling back there, seeing what the sniper bots could do, and then only when Voice of War turned away, chasing them down, finishing them off. I think they could have had a bigger advantage in that confrontation. But in actual fact, they're making some moves on the south as well, and they've got shellers in their mix now. So those walls aren't going to, aren't going to slow them down too much. While the pelters returning fire.
Oh, pelter fire comes in, takes care of one of those shells, which leaves only one remaining. Oh, and there goes the other one as well. So pelter's really paying off actually in this circumstance for Voices of War.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I'm just amazed to see Promethean as solidly in it as they are. I would expect them to, frankly, to be out of the game by now. But even though they're 500 units behind, it doesn't feel like they are.
No, they're the ones that are getting into the fights and calling a lot of the actions, so it certainly doesn't look like they're the ones that are reacting right now. And the confrontations they've been getting into seem to have been very good. This large group of forces here keeps kiting back and retreating, and the sniper bots, they're really thinning out those forces. That group is half the size, and they didn't kill many of the Promethean side, so they seem to be paying off and getting into good confrontations right now.
Sniper bots are a beautiful thing. There becomes a point, I think, where shellers are what you go for, but you have to get to that critical mass of shellers, and until then, sniper bots are always going to win because they're just so maneuverable that they just run away, they can kite your forces, they can pick everything off.
That's the one advantage. The sniper bots are just great at kiting. They can go in and out very easily, whereas the shellers, they absolutely can't. They need support, they're very long range, but they can't just kite back very easily at all.
So a massive boombot force for Voices of War coming in. And to be quite honest, if they could get amongst those tanks, they could really do some damage. But there's a few Infernos in there. If they position it right, they should be able to shut that down.
Oh wow, a lot of them are getting lost. Look at them. They've run into a wall of fire and they haven't managed to reach the tanks. There we go, a couple of them managed to reach the tanks, but wow, they didn't get very close at all.
No, that was poor play. I think it feels like Voices of War sort of lost as to what they should be doing. And so they're just taking those units and they're like, okay, let's just try throwing the boombots at them.
They're just sending them in, aren't they? They're just throwing it in and seeing what sticks. And walls are going up here to get in more good confrontations for Promethean. And Voices of War seem to just be sort of grabbing a large group of units and sending them in and not sort of really going for the weak points.
I was going to suggest really at this point perhaps the Voices of War should be using their eco advantage to bring out the new and vastly improved SXX lasers. Is it SSX or SXX? But
SFX.
they should be using them because those things now have an area of effect. They can devastate ground groups of units, and I'm not seeing any anti-orbital in amongst those Promethean armies. So now is a window they have to really take advantage of that and perhaps just decisively turn the tide.
Looking at the eco, 1,000, almost 1,100 now to 800. So still leading from Voices of War, but you know, the gap is still not that big, and the higher the ecos, the less of a difference it makes. So Promethean, in terms of eco, at least are still doing okay.
Well, it feels like Promethean are turning the tide, and there's another attempted invasion here from Voices of War over at Buns, but again, shut down nicely by Promethean. Even though there's more Avengers than Voices of War, they poorly position the Fabber, and it gets taken out. But we see, in fact, that Promethean are slowly closing the gap in terms of army size as well, and for factory count, they're identical.
Yeah.
It just feels like they're making much better use of what they've got. They've defended beautifully.
Yeah. All of their confrontations are good ones. These sniper bots here are still just taking pot shots and slowly thinning out the forces. All the confrontations they're getting into seem to be favourable for them. And even though Voices of War have all the units, they're not doing good stuff. And we actually see, like over here, this large group of units has been there for a long time. Next to that teleporter at the back of their base. And it's just wasted units. They're not using what they've got to their full advantage.
Well, I think I'm guessing that those units have been positioned there, and they've been preparing for this invasion of Buns, the invasion that has never happened, because they keep trying to get teleporters up. And of course, if you get a teleporter up, you have to have your units ready to go immediately. You can't move there afterwards, or you'll get shut down. But they're just not finding a window in. And I don't understand why, though. They have a decisive unit advantage. They just need to put some Fabbers there, stick the Avengers around them, and then that area is theirs. They'll eventually break through.
Yeah. Do we see any T2 air? That's definitely something that might be a good idea if they want to start invading the air. We do. So T2 air is almost finished, actually, for Voices of War. Once they start getting up those T2 fighters, then they can send them in there, destroy all those T1 bombers, and then it's much harder to stop.
In fact, it's already up. They already have a T2 air factory over here, but it's just producing Fabbers at the moment.
Indeed, so they already have two, so they're fully prepared to sort of go into it now, really.
I think what we're seeing here, is probably just because this patch is so new. Of course, with the previous patch, players had played it a lot, so you sort of instinctively knew what to do. You saw a unit, you knew what countered it. Now with this new patch, people don't think T2 air, they don't think SXX, because it's all new. It's stuff they haven't done before.
Yeah, I totally agree. They just don't know how to immediately respond to things because the whole meta's changed and lots of stuff is now viable and lots of stuff isn't, and I don't think anyone quite knows how it all interacts and what the best unit compositions are now. It seems like mixed forces are pretty powerful.
Well, I think if we think back to King of the Planet 5, when there was a major meta change where we went from the T2 rush down to Tier 1 units being useful. And we saw there that Matiz used an Inferno Grenadier push, and it won the day. He ended up winning that series, but just a few weeks later, Grenadiers and Inferno mixes were nowhere to be seen. I think we're seeing a lot of new units now. I'd just be interested to see a few weeks from now if we still see these combos, if this is really people just feeling out this balance and seeing what works.
Promethean is also in a much more solid situation in terms of their defences. They've got lines of walls and turrets and pelters in their southern base now, whereas previously they had no defences. They're just looking a lot safer, even though they don't have too much map control. And of course, they've won the moon now, and defending against invasions very well. They're also building a lot of T2 metal on the moon, and they may have an even amount of mechs. They may even be able to have an advantage overall. I'm not sure once they start getting it out.
Yeah, and indeed, Voices of War seem to almost given up on the moon. They're just sitting there with a radar from Avengers, but making no efforts to get back on there again. And really, I think that's almost where they should focus their efforts, because if they take the moon or get a force on the moon to take out some of that resources, that the Promethean are just going to fold.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, either they have to go ham and just destroy everything on the lava planet and then they can close it out, but it's 22 minutes in and they can't break them. They really can't. So they should be concentrating on the moon, because there's still at a point where they can be disrupted and they can land on it, and the disruption is going to be really powerful because all of this mechs is just uncontested right now.
Well, Promethean are finally launching that docks raid at the 22-minute mark at the back of Voices of War base, and we're seeing the bumblebees go over, but quite a lot of docks there. They might not make it through, and it's just a little area patrol, and those bombers aren't doing nothing. Oh, they're going for the teleporter, in fact, not for the docks. And Voice of War slowly moving their tank and docks force over. I think Promethean would indeed be well advised to head... I don't even know which direction it is. To head that way, the thing I'm pinging. Yeah, that way. Away from that army, so that they could do way more damage. There's a lot of exposed resources around there.
Yeah, going for the patrol to take less damage from the bombers and split themselves up. At this stage, though, this isn't actually going to do any lasting damage. They destroy some T1 mechs. Best case scenario, minus 50 medal. It doesn't really matter. And they're going to lose all their units for the price of it as well.
Well, I think almost at this stage of the game, metal extractors are acting less perhaps as a resource income and more as vision of their area. They're almost like little line of sight outposts at this point. So by killing all those, you're denying some intelligence to your enemies, so they have less idea of what's going on in that area. And indeed, I don't see. Oh no, they have some radar coverage over. I don't know how far back it goes, but you know, when you lose sight of an area, it's you're probably going to do anything. You've got to waste time going back there scouting and see what's going on.
So what do you think the next step is for both teams? What do you reckon they should be doing right now?
I think, well, Promethean, I think, are playing it just right. They've been beautifully building up these lines of walls, so no matter where they're attacked, they just fall behind their walls and hold. It's a mistake, I think, by Voice of War going so heavy on the bolos, really, because these walls stop them. Some grenadiers would have rendered those walls irrelevant, and they perhaps could have done a lot more damage there. I think they really should be using their resource advantage to break out some bigger guns than they are.
Oh wow, this was lovely placement. Those bombers there, they specifically targeted them in at the Sheller and all of the sniper bots as well. Managed to take care of most of those snipers, which weakens that force considerably. And it just seems like in these confrontations, very few blue units are being lost right now. They're using all their long-range sniper bots to great effect, hiding behind walls, using their bombers, getting free kills all over the place, and allowing them to push forwards. If you look over at the army tab, 650 to 850, so they've caught up a lot. I mean, 5 or 7 minutes ago, we were on 500 to 1,000 units, so they've really closed the gap.
Yeah, and Promethean finishing off the last of Voices of War's orbital force over on Buns now. Finally getting rid of the radar that's been sitting there for a while. Once again, just solidifying their hold. I think Voice of War have just got to make a decision on exactly what it is they're doing. I think that's the biggest problem. It doesn't feel like they have a plan. They're just sort of trying a bit of everything. A bit of orbital here, a bit of the ground attack there. There's no focus on any one thing. And when you've got the resource advantage like they have, you can pick an area and then you can win it, because your opponent can't stop you. They've got less resources. You can outspend them. The Voice of War just aren't focusing on anything. I think at this point, perhaps, I think Voice of War need to be a bit smarter with the teleporters. Perhaps instead of going to Buns with them, they should be getting an orbital fabber over, sticking a teleporter like there or something, and just attacking where there are no walls. Because they have the troops to take on Promethean, they just don't have the troops to take on Promethean and Promethean's walls.
A couple of orbital fabbers been trying to drop on the moon again, but immediately shot down. Bad location there, and it just seems like a bit like what we've seen with Pag, just inexperience in the orbital and Voices of War. Even though they're ahead, they don't know what to do.
Well, I can sympathise entirely with them. I stepped in recently for a game, Voices of War against MW, where we got into orbital, and then we got thoroughly spanked. It was a shameful day for us. It can become a point of where I don't think many people have a lot of experience in the orbital. There isn't that sort of practice at what you should do when you hit the orbital stage. It's not like, everyone knows a 1v1 on a small planet, what you do. It played hundreds and hundreds of games. There's just nothing like that in the orbital phase. I think we're just seeing lack of experience from clans and players there.
We do see a nuke is out by Voices of War. They're assisting it with a couple of engineers. It's 15% of the way through.
And likewise, anti-nuke's going up from Promethean, but again, I think nuke's probably a good choice. Yeah, the larger the game, the more spread out the bases are becoming, the harder it is to counter with anti-nukes, because an anti-nuke is more cost-effective than a nuke, but the nuke can fire anywhere, and generally, someone with a nuke is gonna win that game if they're smart with it.
More attacks coming in. We see a couple more grenadiers in the mix now for the Voice of War's forces.
Well, they've also finally taken down these northern walls as well, so they can finally flank the Promethean force. But for some reason, they keep taking the more easterly approach. They're sending more troops down there, but really they need to focus more attention up on that northern area, where they'll flank that force. There are no walls, and their still superior economy should really give them the edge. Especially if they've got a teleporter right up there, so they can bring through any troops they want and just overwhelm that line. But they have finally flanked the walls that were holding that base. If they can keep the pressure up there, that could be an area where they could finally break Promethean, especially if they get through that teleporter and shut that down.
That would help. I don't think they have enough forces now. They do have a lot of sniper bots in the mix, but they don't want to be getting into direct confrontation like they are right now. However, we're already up to 50% on the nuke, and it's once you get to this stage where you're over sort of 1,000, 1,500 medal, and you get a bit of build power on the nukes come out really quickly, and it can really push the fate of the game towards your favour. And I think that might be what will happen here if they maybe even concentrate on a second nuke.
Well, Promethean are really starting to focus around their teleporter, and that's left these walls vulnerable to Voices of War, who, once again, are dithering. That force that was coming towards the south, then started heading towards the north, and now it's coming towards the south again. And don't seem to make up their mind what they're doing. And they really should just be using this opportunity to punch through those walls while there are no defenders there, reinforce the sudden attack, and just overwhelm that teleporter, or at least thin out the troops there.
So looking over the T2 air factories, Voices of War have built a whole load of T2 air fabbers with one of them, and they've started building their T2 fighters with the other. So they still have the option for invades, particularly if they use a nuke to help clear the way. Looking over at Buns, do we see any anti-nukes here? We do see an anti-nuke that's been started but not finished. So I think there's scope for this nuke to be pulled off before the anti-nukes get finished.
Potentially, but it depends if they have the intelligence there. I don't think they don't really know what's going on at Buns. I don't think they know where those commanders are. But a nuke landing there, blowing up the Centaurian commander, that'll do enough damage with the Centaurian explosion to finish off the Invictus commander, who's there as well. It'll be a very sweet target, but I don't think they know they should be nuking it.
And that nuke is very close now, 93% the way through. And I wonder whether they've chosen a target here. Oh, actually beginning to break through here. We see them coming through with a decent force of T2 units. Got levelers and shellers and sniper bots in the mix. And Promethean's being a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, I think they've been spending a lot of time attacking Promethean at the south, and while Promethean were defending that attack, Voices of War finally took out that northern wall line, and since then that's looked very vulnerable. And at last, Voices of War pushing through, finally getting past the walls that kept Promethean in this game so long, but Voice of War's economy has really started to run away now. Promethean haven't kept up that raiding, so the gap's increased again, and I think they're in real trouble now.
Definitely. I'm not sure how they're going to get out of this one, even though they have the whole other planet. And I think if they can just keep the pressure on and win the lava planet, it's going to make it so much more difficult for Promethean.
Yeah, I think if Voices of War win the lava planet, then it's GG for Promethean at that point. The economy is 119 mechs to 26. The economy advantage will be so massive that Promethean will basically have to have a whole bunch of nukes ready to launch on top of every commander's head to win the game at that point. Or they could YOLO the moon into the lava planet, I suppose. Oh, indeed, I see a nuke has been launched. I see a Voices of War nuke.
I managed to totally miss that.
There was no audio notice. It's about to land on the Tier 2 vehicle factory.
Where's this? On the lava?
Yes, so they just pinged it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, someone is clearly running their 5 million player game on the same server that we're running on, because our poor little Uber service needs to be struggling.
Yeah, that was quite a nice placement. Destroyed all the turrets as well. Unfortunately, didn't destroy the walls, but no biggie because
missed the anti-nuke by inches.
And they can now push through. There's a lot of forces that have been building up in that base over there, and they're ready to move through in this void that has been left. Look at the army tab though. Promethean have more units right now. They've still got 800 units, but Voices of War steadily decreasing.
I think we'll see. I can't see what I really want a metal count of army, because I suspect we would see that the Voice of War army is a more expensive army with probably a bit more tier 2 in it.
It does look like that.
And I think the Promethean looking vulnerable enough on all fronts now that, although they have rather handily beaten Voices of War from their northern front again. I just don't know. I think the sniper bot's just making such a huge difference.
Yeah, the more nukes are coming in though, as we see 90% now. And a little bit more build power has even been put on those nukes, so they're really putting everything into it. You can see they're stalling their medal. Even though they've got 2,000, they're stalling it by 75% just because they're plunging everything into their resources and really actually using up their eco right now.
Yeah, and indeed, Promethean really going for the anti-nukes, but that's a losing battle. They can't afford to be pumping the resources while they're behind into the anti-nukes, but they have to. I don't see what their other choice is, but I just... Yeah, and on the moon, again, anti-nukes, but I really think they should be trying to find an edge somewhere. They're starting to put up a nuke now. I would put more resources into that and less into their orbital and ground. I don't see how else they're going to come back apart from a surprise nuke from the moon at this point.
Yeah, and this is really bad for Promethean now, having this big stream of forces go straight in. They don't have any turrets or defences really. They're putting up some turrets now. They do have one line of walls, and they have a lot of shellers actually. There's 8 shellers, 9 shellers, 10 shellers I think there, piling in all of these shells, and I wouldn't be surprised if the area of effect really does a lot to these forces. That nuke got launched. Where did it come? I think it's coming straight across at one of these other bases. Here we are.
Yeah, slowly creeping across the north there. And they're smart. They should land on that... Oh, it's actually they've just pinged these vehicle factories. I suspect that's where it's going.
Gonna hit a lot of the production.
It'll be a smart area to hit, because that'll break the Voice of War with free to come in from that side then. And I think we'll slowly, well, as fast as the sim allows, see the end of Promethean. And indeed, that's where the nuke is going down. And yeah, I think at this point, if I was Promethean, it would be time to call the GGs.
Well, their eco isn't going to decrease too much, because all of their eco is contained on the moon.
I just don't... But they just don't... I don't see anything from Promethean that suggests that they're going to put any pressure on Voices of War at this point. They're losing on every front. The nukes are coming in at a reasonably regular rate now. All they've got is that moon.
But they could build 3 Halleys and ride it into the lava planet.
They could Brad Nicholson it, is what you're saying here.
Yeah. Put on a cowboy hat and go yeehaw. If
So
I'm
really,
going down, I'm taking you with me.
And if they Halley the lava planet, that really is a win for them, isn't it, at that point?
Sure. They can't lose.
Yeah, in actual fact, they should. They get the Halleys up. They attempt Voices of War into an all-commander invasion on the moon.
Yeah.
And then Halley the lava planet. GG's. This is over.
They've still got a shot at a draw, you know. Draw's better than a loss. Go for it. Moon smash.
Moon smash and hope all the Voices of War commanders gather together.
Yeah. I hope they're all in the same place.
In actual fact, with Promethean are making a little raid into one of Voices of War's bases. It's not going to get very far, but they're trying to show they're not dead yet. Unfortunately, Promethean, I think you are.
80% of the way through the next nuke. All those forces that came in that attack, they did very little damage. They got hammered really hard by the shellers.
Yeah, but at the end, I don't think shellers by themselves an attack do not make. They need a shielding force, and we can see here the Voice of War just running away from them. The commander massively exposed.
Yep, underneath an anchor, which is not a good place to be.
Yeah. And there's another force coming in to close them off. That commander, I don't think, is going to be getting away. Voice of War hopefully won't lose all their units doing that, of course.
Which leaves one commander remaining on the desert planet, going over to Burns. Oh, we still have 2 commanders there as well.
Oh, I see some another Promethean attack the back lines of Voices of War here, and some tier 2 fighters.
Oh, nice. It's nice that they can do that from behind. Just a single orbital fabric there, building multiple teleporters. Those T2 air units protecting against the bombers, which are just coming in now. Will they be there in time?
I don't think that's going to end well for those bombers and fighters. I think those tier 2 fighters are going to be more than enough to take all of that out.
I think they are, particularly underneath the anti-air and the docks as well.
And Oh, a nuke going off, and the Promethean commander's about to die as well, I think. Just Voice of War just need to be careful that they don't waste too many units in the explosion. And let me just take a moment here to say how gorgeous I think the new anchor model and effect is. So much better than that old nasty one with the turrets sticking through the anchor.
Apparently I keep saying desert planet.
It's the lava planet, Zaphod.
Alright. Lavas and deserts are both hot, right?
No, well, it depends. If the desert planet's at night, it wouldn't be. There you go, children. It's an educational stream for you now.
I guess.
The more you know.
Commander's sitting on 4%. He's actually got a Sheller Shell coming in him, which might be the one to finish him off.
I think, yeah, Voice of War being so cautious about losing their units that they haven't actually sent enough fire at him to finish him. But they don't need to, really, because the last of Promethean's bases on the lava planet is going down. Promethean's last gasp attack is happening in Voices of War base. And there's... I don't think they've got enough there to really do much, though.
There's just no way they can defend or send in reinforcements to keep holding on to this base, and I think this final push is what seals it for Voices of War. And the sheer amount of metal advantage they have from being on the lava planet is too much to overcome. Yeah,
unfortunately, I think that they just lost this game early on. I almost want to say that they lost it because they just sacrificed the air completely, which meant that they couldn't take the metal that was in the area between their bases, because Voices of War were just bombing it, and it meant that Voices of War have been ahead economically ever since. And they've never, despite their best efforts, Promethean have never been able to make up that gap. Oh, and indeed, I think we see here that whatever game was running on the server is finished, because the sim seems to sped up nicely.
Oh, it has, hasn't it?
So, whoever was running a 10-player free-for-all, thank you for finishing.
It is now a lot faster. Interesting. So, the last bastion of defense on the lava planet.
Yeah, Promethean really look like they're going to hold on to the last man here, but I just don't see it for them. They're trying another sneaky teleporter at the back here of Voices of War, but I think Voices of War now have surrounded one of their commanders with units. I just don't see that Promethean are ever going to break through now. The economy advantage is huge, and the factory advantage is now 30 to 70.
Yeah, that's a big production advantage. And we do see the mobile forces now. They're just probably going to start overtaking in forces and keep exchanging. Great work from Promethean, still putting in the effort, you know, piling in all these attacks on the backside and trying to do all this raiding even at 30 minutes into the game.
Unfortunately, it does seem that Promethean's Clan Wars dream is ending with this game, whereas Voices of War keeping it open for a potential first place still. And an interplanetary nuke gone off as well, heading off towards Buns. Not sure where that's going to go, and I think there's anti-nukes there, and indeed I believe it just got shot down. Yeah, so there's at least there's one more anti-nuke left and another one halfway through being built. I don't think that's not going to get nuked anytime soon, Buns.
Invasion's coming in now, and I'm not sure if Promethean can keep holding off. They've been holding off relatively well, but they haven't had any dedicated invasions coming in, and teleport already going down for Voices of War, and they're also building up anchors in another area. One thing I like to do is build several anchors to defend sort of the orbital space and then start going for the teleporters, and it makes it much harder to stop your invasion.
I suppose it depends on what the enemy has, because the problem with they've been patched now, so I'm not quite sure how the anchor plays out, but it used to be anchors were rather weak, I felt, and you're better off getting the teleporter down quickly, getting your troops through before your opponent could respond. The problem with putting the anchors up first, it gives your opponent time to get their Avenger force over and just overwhelm your fabbers. Or just even move their bomber force over there, so the second you start trying to do anything, the bombers roll on in, take out the teleporter. Oh, and Promethean...
Whole load of bombers just dropped that teleporter down to nothing. But another teleporter also going up on the north-hand side. You say a nuke coming out?
Promethean nuke looks just got shot down. They tried one on one of Voices of War's bases on the lava planet. Would have been a nice hit if it had got through, although they did miss the energy. But there's an anti-nuke there. Voices of War have been preparing for that. They've got their anti-orbital up, they've got their anti-nukes up, they've got troops sitting around now so that teleporter invasions are getting shot down. I think Promethean have missed the window for launching any surprises from the moon, I fear.
And a nice sneaky little drop with some Pelicans, but it didn't work out.
And indeed, Voices of War have now got some tier 2 fighters over on the over on Buns to try and so they're not going to get their teleporters bombed out anymore. Although stop building anchors, Voices of War. Stop building anchors. Build the teleporter. You're just going to lose that fabric to Avengers.
The thing is, though, Promethean are running out of Avengers, and it's quite difficult to spam out enough Avengers. You kind of need them ready so that they can get there in time. And as you start losing those Avengers, I think it becomes harder and harder to try and defend.
I think they'll get ground down eventually, but the problem with the Fairbairn only takes a couple of shots, I think, to kill from an Avenger. Yeah, so it's very hard to stop them from being killed. And indeed, now Promethean have got their tier 2 air over there. If they'd just built the teleporter, then they'd have got the teleporter down. They'd have got some troops through. They could have begun the invasion. They're really playing an overly cautious game, I think, there on Buns.
Oh wow, we just missed a huge T1 bomber snipe on the lava planet, which I had in the pit there. They managed to really group up their air units all in one group, so it looked like one bomber.
Yeah, for some reason, Promethean are building Pelicans. I'm not quite sure what the plan is for those, but that's fair. Oh, they're going for snipes, are they? What the hell have they got in them? Shellers? Okay, well, this will be the most unusual snipe ever if they can try and pull this off.
Is this anchors? Sorry,
no,
umbrellas.
They've got some Pelicans carrying shellers. That base that the snipe happened at. A couple of Pelicans just heading off with shellers in them now.
Wow, that's the weirdest nuke I've ever seen. They nuked 2 metal extractors and a couple of units. I'm guessing they were aiming for the group of units. I don't know, but that was some weird nuke.
It would have been a nice timing if they pulled it off, but alas, no. Oh, no, you need to aim your anchors at the umbrella.
That's a good job. I'm surprised they managed to get up the umbrella in time.
But this is why I think they really shouldn't be messing around with this invasion. They just need to get teleported down there. They should have ages ago.
Now they're finally getting it down, and they're doing it when there's units there.
Yeah.
And they have 6 engineers. They can build it so quickly. They need to move away from those umbrellas. They're going to walk into them.
Yep, they're moving.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
What we're seeing here is some perfect examples of how not to play the orbital game.
Yeah, just falling apart at this stage. And they allowed 2 umbrellas to get built outside of range. Wow.
I think we can safely say, I think at this point, that Voices of War very macro team. They're playing they played a really nice economic game, but every time it's come down to troop usage, Promethean have been outplaying them.
They have sent in the cleanup crew of units in behind the nuke of the commander. So everything that's remaining on the lava planet will be cleared up. They're already building the T2 mechs in the mechs that they just relinquished.
And unit cannons firing now. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 unit cannons launching troops towards Buns from Voices of War. And I think that is going to be the force that's going to end this, or at least it's going to end the holdout on Buns, if not perhaps finish the game.
Yeah, and they're just going for damage here. They're just going to damage the eco, attack in multiple directions. They've got teleporters up now as well. Now one of these commanders is nearly dead. They could have easily gone for a snipe, certainly on him. I guess they're playing safe, aren't they?
Well, thank God they managed to sneak that Bolo and Dox into that group, though. Yeah. I think that's going to make the difference.
They do have that anti-air in there.
The one anti-air and a Bolo and a Dox, because everyone should be represented for the invasion.
Indeed. Look at that one anti-air. he got targeted down. He's a goner before they even got here.
Oh, Voices of War. That's not how you launch an invasion with your 7 unit cannons. But it has given them the distraction they need to finally get up 2 teleporters, in fact, on Buns.
Yeah, and units streaming through both of them now. Defensive nuke actually coming out from Promethean. Probably, I imagine, on one of those teleporters.
Yeah, I think it's on the teleporter underneath the orbitals, so they better get out of the way, because I think nukes still take out units in orbit. So they need to get out of their area ASAP, but it's not going to save them.
Yeah, it's It's unusual they don't have their T2 fighters with them right now, just defending against these bombers.
I think they're all... Aren't they all dead now, or do they still have them?
They had T2 air a long time in this game. It's the sort of thing they should have ready. I feel like T2 fighters are your go-to unit. You really should have them.
Yeah, well, I think Voices of War have just been wearing them down. I think we've seen a Voices of War Tier 2 fighter tangling with Promethean. I suspect while Promethean be coming out on front, they just can't keep the production up. And that nuke takes out the teleporter, and the Force gets taken out as well. But the orbital troops survive, and I think it's just Jonas Moore calling a good point there with Voices of War down a player there for a few minutes. Definitely that could have been a turning point, but
yeah, almost a comeback on the cards there.
Promethean so close. Still hanging on to, not only hanging on to the lava player, but they have teleporters down again. In fact, in the same place they always have teleporters. It's Voices of War just never seem to realise that there's a pattern forming as to where these invasions are happening. But so many.
I can't believe Promethean is still invading that planet. They really haven't given up.
Oh, and a few Tier 2 air. This is where the last of their Tier 2 air is sitting. On the lava, in fact. So, okay. Yeah, I'm looking over at what Promethean have, and I think it's just obstinance at this point, keeping them in the game, because there ain't no coming back from this.
Yeah, I think they're being a bit stubborn.
I think we're just going to watch Voice of War grinding down with that economic difference now. Oh my god, it's like 5 times as many units of Voices of War, 4 times as many factories, well, 3 times maybe.
Yeah, 5 times the eco right now.
Yeah, it's just... There's just no... Yeah, there's no winning here for Promethean.
Orb saying that Promethean's try-hard mode is cute.
Well, I guess that this is the same attitude though that's kept them in the game for this long, and indeed looked at a time like it was going to turn the tide against Voices of War.
Yeah.
But the economic advantage, the economic difference is just so big now.
Yeah, I would say at one point they definitely had a chance to turn it around, but
yeah, Voices of War were flailing, and Promethean just never quite pushed. I think Promethean missed their chance just because they didn't raid quite right. They went in with slow forces where they needed fast, and they weren't aggressive enough in their raiding. They need to be there more regularly, perhaps smaller groups, but doing it more often. And they just didn't shut down Voices of War economy well enough. And again, I think it applies slightly to the fact that they lost the air war so early, because Voices of War just turned an air force around and bombed whatever Promethean sent over, unless it was slow, in which case it didn't have the speed to raid properly.
I think they should have smashed the moon earlier. I think they missed their opportunity. They can't do it now.
Yet the moment of glory has passed.
Yeah.
I think perhaps there is still an opportunity for them to do better than PA Gods. They could still self-nuke. There is still that chance. But
Unit
Voices
cannon
of
drops
War,
coming
yeah,
in.
right in the heart of Promethean now. This is when they can't even defend their own base against the drop. That's really a sign that it's over. And 2 commanders just sort of dancing around the little orbital factory there. Truly beautiful. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know what else there is to say about this game at this point.
Yeah, got units coming in from the north, all those slammers coming in from the south, more tanks coming in. Left hand side has a whole load of units also coming in. I think it's going to concede that commanders there.
Yep, that is the and that's the end of, I think, what's been an inevitable victory for a while now.
Bit of a weird game. Voices of War though managed to eventually grind out the win. And Prometheans had a pretty bad showing recently, just not managing to have too much luck in their games. Congratulations to Voices of War though, and we will come back with the next game very soon.
Engaged.
And indeed, congratulations to Voices of War, because this keeps them in the running for the #1 spot.